psychologist or doctor or PhD. I mean, I'm the only high school graduate in the group.
Oh,
I know.
whatever.
But
You,
they
you
are-
need to be represented.
I
You
like
need to
that.
represent.
I like to represent
Yeah.
the little people.
Yeah.
I like
Okay.
it.
All right. All right. Is that everybody? There are some more people out there. The earth tongue, what are those called?
Good. It's the thing you sent me.
Yes, perfect.
I'm just gonna read it.
That's great.
Okay. Just up.
Go for it.
I used to print.
That you can read that is amazing.
Really?
It's all blurry to me.
Can you hold this?
I know, right?
All right, folks, it's 11 o'clock. We're going to get started. Thank you for joining us for day 2 of the 2023 Tilden Fungus Fair back in person.
Yay! Woo!
It is my pleasure to introduce our first presenter of the day, Chef Morgan Evans. I'm going to read a bio. Morgan Evans works for the East Bay Regional Park District. That's us. As a recreation coordinator in charge of the co-op and adventure crew programs. Morgan began her career in the Park District in 2007 as a docent for the Tilden Nature Area. Here. Yeah. In 2008, she joined the ISA staff, that's interpretive student aid, while working on her Ranger Naturalist certificate. So many different talents.
I know.
Yeah. Her many roles at the Park District also included docent at the Regional Parks Botanic Garden, recreation leader, and naturalist. Morgan holds an associate's degree in the culinary arts and loves to merge her 2 interests, the outdoors and food. She's a certified interpretive guide through NAI, and she loves backpacking, botanizing, and foraging for wild edibles. Everyone, Chef Morgan Evans.
Yay.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel very fortunate to be able to come here and present once again at this amazing event. I just want to see a show of hands. How many people have been to this Tilden Fungus Fair before? We've got a lot of newbies. So if you were here before, did you join the cooking demo? All right, so we got a bunch of, you did, excellent. Well, I remember all the things that I've made over the years. I've been doing this ever since the inception. So whenever Trent came on board, I can't remember what year that was, we've had a fungus fair and I've done a cooking demo. And so I spend about 6 months agonizing about what I'm going to present at these cooking demos. And so this year, I'm going to do something that it's kind of a rip on something I've done before, and that is our porcini cream sauce. So it is a crowd pleaser. So not only did I go to cooking school, but I also did my externship at Chez Panisse. I did that externship during the winter, and basically I was in the basement with a table like this covered with mushrooms, black chanterelles, hedgehogs, you name it. And so it was my job to clean like just giant amounts of choice edibles. And so after the 6 months I was there, I felt like, wow, I really know what these things look like. And so I kind of felt empowered that I could go out and forage for them on my own and not kill myself, right? So, but one of the things I did learn when I was there, besides familiarizing myself with mushrooms, was this porcini cream sauce. So I've done this before where it's just been a cream sauce that we put on pasta, which is incredibly delicious. But this time I'm gonna incorporate it into a bread pudding. So the last 2 years, this demonstration has been recorded or live, but not in person. And so I was able to do things that I could do that I didn't have to feed a large crowd. Since we're now back in person, I needed to make something that I could make in a good volume that wasn't super tedious. And so bread pudding. It's still winter. We're all still kind of making sure we're gonna stay warm through the night. So this is a very rich recipe, but I think that you're going to like it. Does anyone have any questions about choice edibles or anything about the demonstration before I get going? Any questions? Feel free to ask questions throughout the course of the demonstration if you're like, hey, I want to know about, that technique or this technique. So I have good news and bad news with this recipe. The bad news is there's a lot of prep work that goes into it. The good news is you can make it ahead of time and let it sit. So I made the batches that we're going to taste yesterday. They sat in the fridge. They're in the oven now. But so you can make it ahead of time and then it's not so tedious. So basically the main thing with this is the porcini cream sauce. So we're using heavy cream and then dried mushrooms. When you make the porcini cream sauce, you have to be very, very careful. If you turn this up too high, it will invariably boil over, make a huge mess all over your stove, and you will have lost most of your cream. So basically what you do is you infuse the cream with the mushrooms. And if you want to come and take a closer look, you're welcome to do that. But so it makes it super rich. You really get the porcini flavor into the recipe. So I'm trying to make this thing as mushroomy as possible, right? So this cream right now is like super infused with those dried mushrooms. We're going to pull them out. We're going to, oh yeah.
Do you put the dried mushrooms directly into the cream sauce?
I put them in here when that cream was cold, and I put this on super, super low, and I let it sit for like an hour on very low heat, just infusing the cream. If you can see it, it's very brown right now. This cream is like super, super, super infused with the dried mushrooms. So that is going to be kind of like your most time consuming part of this recipe because you want to start it ahead of time and then just let it sit. So yes. These I probably bought at, Zari's, that little delicatessen at the bottom of Solano. Andronico's sells dried mushrooms. You can probably get them online. I tend to like to forage for my own and dry them, but for something like this, I had to go out and buy some. So, oh yes, I have 2 dehydrators at home. I have one that's kind of similar to the one in that corner right there, but it just has a heating element, and that's really good. Or there's ones that you can plug in that has a fan, and so you can actually set the temperature on those. And so if you're making something like jerky or meat where you want to set the temperature high and then turn it down lower, that would be a good thing to have. But this one is really nice. It's very quiet because it's just a heating element. You can let it go a couple days, depends on the mushrooms, how long they take.
Just want to say Berkeley Jewel Library has dehydrators.
Oh, really? Oh, wonderful. Oh, that's great. Do you work there or you just know that? Oh, that's great. Yeah, this one is inexpensive. It should have more layers in it. You could put a lot of mushrooms in there. You kind of, because it doesn't have the fan, you have to kind of rotate things and rotate the shelves and turn them around and stuff like that. But yes, you can, if you don't have this type of thing and you don't have access to the library, you can just put them on like sheet pans in the oven and have it down really low and kind of prop the door open. Yeah. Any other questions about dehydrating mushrooms? Yeah, the key to this, the star of this recipe is this cream sauce, right? So low and slow is the way to go. Otherwise, there's generally a giant mess, right? So I'll just go over our ingredients real quick. I did put some dried black chanterelles in the ones that are in the oven. This is my favorite choice edible. We can pass this around and you can give it a sniff. This is my favorite one. And actually my cat loves them too. He eats these like a little cat treat snack. That's his favorite thing. So we have heavy cream in the sauce, also some milk, a little vermouth. This is porcini salt that I made myself. So something you can do with your dried mushrooms is grind them up in a clean coffee grinder. Make sure you have one that's designated just for like your spices. Don't use the one with the coffee in it, otherwise it'll infuse that. If you want to clean it out, you can put like fresh bread and, squeeze it out a couple times and that will kind of clean it out. But best to have one that's just dedicated to your spices. So grind up your dried mushrooms, mix it in with some kosher salt. It's like deliciousness, right? So we'll cook with the porcini salt. We're going to like hit everyone over the head with the porcini flavor today. Salt and pepper. So we got the salt, the porcini salt. This is something new and fun that I got at Oaktown Spice Shop. Does anyone know Oaktown Spice Shop? Super fun, right? There's one on Solano, one in Oakland, one maybe over in Walnut Creek. I can't remember, but they have smoked peppercorns, hickory smoked peppercorns. So I got a bunch of those to try them out. So we'll put that in our recipe. Olive oil, butter, cheese, eggs, garlic, onion, shallot, herbs, and then of course the mushrooms. So, not to forget the bread because we're having a bread pudding, right? So now our cream is ready. It's been infusing like for an hour and a half now. And so this is ready to go. But what we need to do now is cook our mushrooms. So when you're cooking mushrooms, anyone have any experience with dry sauteing? Dry sauteing? Anyone know about dry sauteing? Raise your hand if you've heard about dry sauteing. These two gentlemen in the middle here have heard about dry sauteing. It's amazing. At such a tender age, they already know how to present and cook their mushrooms. So mushrooms tend to have a lot of moisture. They're outgrowing in the wild. Sometimes it's very rainy. They're going to get really wet. They're going to get kind of waterlogged. You want to clean them off, never with water. Use a brush, right? A little mushroom brush. Get up all the dirt. I did this for like however many months at Japanese, cleaning mushrooms. And then you want to put them in a skillet without any fat. So what you do when you're doing that is that the mushrooms are going to release that liquid, right? You can either dump off that liquid or you can let the mushrooms reabsorb it. It's up to you. It doesn't matter, right? It's your choice. But so often when you get mushrooms and they taste really kind of rubbery and kind of soggy, it's because they have a lot of moisture. And so if your mushrooms are kind of waterlogged, you might just want to dump off that liquid and use it for another part of your recipe, right? So, and then once they've given off the liquid and you've either dumped it off or it's reabsorbed it, that's when you can add the fat into there. So I'm just going to get this skillet hot. And then we're going to cut up some of our mushrooms. Maybe Julie help me cut the mushrooms. I do trust you. 100% I trust you. I'm going to leave it up to you.
Oh, goodness.
And these you can just, you can just tear these apart. Just tear it apart, right? Look at that. Just comes right apart.
Too much, too little.
It's perfect. Yep.
And do you cut off the stems?
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
So mushrooms are, who knows what the nutritional value of mushrooms is? Who wants to guess what the main amount of the mushroom is? Yes. What's it going to be? Is it going to be protein? Is it going to be carbohydrates? Is it going to be minerals? And what do you think? What do you think? Minerals. I have one vote for minerals. Carbohydrates. Vitamin D does count. So mushrooms are mainly protein. Second up is carbohydrates, a little bit of fat, and then some vitamin C, maybe some other minerals. So mushrooms are really good. They're good for you. And fun fact about mushrooms is that they're in their own kingdom, right? Everyone knows that they're in their own kingdom. So they're not in the animal kingdom and they're not in the plant kingdom. They're going to be closer to one of those kingdoms. And I want to see a raise of hands. Who thinks that they're closer to the animal kingdom? Who thinks they're closer to the plant kingdom? All right, you people are very smart. You've learned this along the way. So mushrooms are closer to the animal kingdom than they are the plant kingdom. Now, does anyone who raised their hand who voted for animal kingdom know why? What is it about mushrooms that make them closer to the animal kingdom? Anyone want to guess? I see a hand. Cell structure. What about the cell structure? So yeah, so the cell structure of these, they're made up of chitin. So chitin instead of cellulose, so plants are made up of cellulose, whereas mushrooms are made up of chitin. Who knows what chitin is? It's kind of a weird thing to know, yeah? Yeah, it's in your nails and your hair. It's in like the exoskeleton of insects, right? So it's kind of something that's a little bit hard for us to digest, which is why we cook mushrooms, right? Also, the way they store their carbohydrates, they store it as glucose instead of maybe fructose or something. So that's why mushrooms are closer to the animal kingdom than they are the plant kingdom. Mushrooms are really cool things.
And they're beautiful.
And they're beautiful and they're tasty. They're delicious, right? So here we are dry sauteing. You smell the mushrooms? Yeah, it's very, you do. It's really strong in here right now, right? Do you like the way it smells? You like it too? Who likes the way it smells in this room? I like the way it smells in this room. Awesome, onion blossom. All right. So we are dry sauteing our mushrooms to kind of let out that moisture. I'm gonna just leave those there. And you can see, I get the pan really hot. These ones don't have a lot of liquid, so they're just kind of cooking down a little bit. We'll throw these in there too. Thank you, Julie. Who else has a favorite choice edible? Oh, morels. Who doesn't love a good morel? Stuffed with goat cheese, wrapped with bacon, and stuck on the barbecue. Yeah. Oh, lion's mane. What do you do with that? Saute with lots of butter. You know, last year I was gonna do a crab, like a fake crab cake with the lion's mane, but I bought it so far in advance. By the time the show rolled around, it had sat in the fridge and I'd spent a lot of money at the farmer's market for it, but I'm gonna have to try them one of these days. Anyone else? Other choice edibles? Yes. Oyster mushrooms. Yeah, those are very firm, right? So in my mind, those probably have a lot of chitin in them, right? Kind of like a matsutake that's very, very firm. In the air fryer with a honey miso glaze. Wow. Next year, you're going to do the demo. I might have to retire and let someone else have a shot at this, right? If anyone wants to come up and look at this, it's kind of giving off moisture. You can smell it. It smells really good. You see that? It's a little bit of moisture coming off here.
I see the cream.
You see the cream. Look at that cream. Doesn't that look good? You see the cream as well.
I see that what you're cooking. That smells like pizza.
It smells like pizza. My number one favorite ingredient on mushrooms is pizza.
Pizza.
It smells like pizza.
Hey, all of you need to go sit down somewhere, okay? This is hot up here, all right? So go sit down.
They were just taking a look.
On the floor, we're back there. Don't stand in front of the camera.
Oh, the camera. That's right. I forgot about the camera. So now that these have given off the moisture, I'm going to go ahead and add a little olive oil. And some of our porcini salt. Because you can never have too much porcini in your recipe. And try out this pepper. Did anyone else have a favorite choice edible? Something other than what's been mentioned? Yeah. Oh, maitake. So what do you do with those? Those are also nice and firm, right? You dry saute them too? And then put them in. They're like bacon, right? Yeah. Recently, I was able to forage some chanterelles. And luckily, they weren't super wet, but they were very dirty. It took a lot of time to clean them. And I dry sauteed them. They gave up a ton of moisture. I dumped it off and then I cooked them in bacon fat. Oh my goodness. I'd forgotten how good those things could taste, you know. That was really spectacular. So I'm going to push these mushrooms aside and then we're going to cut up our onion. Yeah, we're going to cut up our onion. So I'm going to sharpen up our knife a little bit. When your knives get dull at home, you have a nice steel. It's not a screwdriver. It's we call it a steel. And so you can sharpen your knife this way, right? This one's made out of diamonds. It's called a diamond steel. Can you imagine that? Do you know what's on here? Tiny little crushed up diamonds. It's true. I'm not making it up. So we're going to cut our mushroom, and I'm sorry, our onion. Not today. So there's more uses for diamonds than just wearing on your ring.
Just came in, we're wondering what mushrooms, what we're smelling.
Oh,
and
okay,
what
okay.
mushrooms.
So we have cremini mushrooms and we have black chanterelles. You can put any mushroom you want in this recipe. You can put your lion's mane, your maitake, your oyster, king oyster. It's entirely up to you. This recipe can be customized to how you like it. In fact, instead of onions, you could put leeks in here. It'd be very delicious, right? We even got some shallot. You can smell those mushrooms. I think everyone can smell those mushrooms, right?
There's a question back here.
Why do I put the mushrooms?
Question when you get a minute.
What was the question? Well, normally I would just cook them separately, but because I don't have time or space, I'm just going to push them back to the side and cook them. You could cook them together. I just wanted to dry saute the mushrooms to give off that liquid first. And so in that sense, I want to do it separately. And I'm just doing this just for convenience sake. Good question. I'm going to add a little bit of butter to my onions. Yeah. You can use leeks. Leeks would be delicious in this recipe. Yes. Shiitakes. Could I put that in here? Oh, I love shiitake mushrooms. So I have a story about shiitake mushrooms. When I was first foraging for mushrooms after that externship at Chez Panisse, I was like, I know what these things look like. I can find them in the wild. And in fact, I did find something that looked very much like a shiitake in the wild. And I was confounded that they weren't in any of the guidebooks. I'm like, why am I not seeing this shiitake? And I had even taken them. I was going to cook them up. And then it turns out they don't grow in the wild here, right? So they're only propagated commercially. And so luckily I didn't eat the ones that I had picked thinking that they were. So the ones that are real shiitake, I think that the gills have kind of like a ragged edge to them, whereas the ones I was finding in the wild were like a straight edge or something. But shiitake, oh gosh, I'll put them just about everything. At Monterey Market, they have little baby ones that they're really tiny little ones, and those ones you can eat the stems. You don't take the stems off. I like to put them in a curry, or gosh, what did I do recently with the baby shiitake? I made like a short ribs, like gray short ribs, and I put those in there. Yum, shiitakes are delicious.
We had another question over here.
Okay.
This woman in the hat. Could you say a little bit more about like eating mushrooms? I have some mushroom rods. I want to use water.
Yeah, if you use water, they're like a sponge, right? They're going to absorb all that water. And then when you go to cook them, it's going to make that giant mess. And so you really want to use just a brush or like a little paring knife to kind of scrape off the dirt. I have resorted to using water sometimes with chanterelles that were so dirty, but then they get really gross, right? They're just like, by the time you cook them up, you may as well just not have done it. So with chanterelles, scraping off the dirt, like, or cutting it off, anything that's kind of darkened or brown looking, and then I have like 2 or 3 of these because they'll get kind of gucky, and then you'll just move to the next one. But yeah, just brushing, wiping it with a towel or using a knife. Oh yeah, so don't put them in plastic. Keep them, like when you go to Monterey Market or wherever you're going to buy your mushrooms, often they'll have paper bags there. So putting them in the paper bag, you can even roll down the top like this and leave them somewhere in the fridge, maybe not the crisper drawer. In my fridge, my crisper drawer gets really wet because it's like this tiny fridge, but.
I have a question about soil on your mushrooms. When you get mushrooms in the store,
Uh-huh.
I am thinking that the soil on the mushrooms is probably fairly sterile.
Yes, absolutely.
And if you ingest some, they don't have to be absolutely perfectly clean.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
look at me. Hey, I
Right.
eat dirt.
Right. I mean, we all eat dirt. We just don't know it. You know, we're all eating little insect parts and whatnot. So it's a really good point. So yeah, the mushrooms that are grown commercially are grown on like a sterilized substrate. And so you'll see a little bit of it on the stems. You can just brush it off, or I don't even look for it, frankly. I just ignore it. But yeah, if you're concerned, just wipe it off.
Yep.
Was there another question I saw? Oh, hi. It means that someone's growing them to make money, right? It's like a business. Whereas like a lot of people, when you see certain mushrooms in the store, like these black chanterelles, no one grew them, not a commercial thing. They just grew in the wild. So people go out and they look for these things. It's kind of like their job. They go out and they hunt for wild mushrooms. They forage wild mushrooms, and they're going to sell that to the store that's now going to sell it to me. So some of the mushrooms you see in the store were actually grown in a big factory, and other mushrooms you see in the store just grew in the wild. And then someone went out and picked them and then brought them to the store, and that's how I'm able to buy them.
So I have another question, and
Yeah.
that is because some mushrooms you can't grow in a farm
That's right.
because they have needs
Right.
in the wild. And what are
Right.
those needs?
So I guess certain moisture conditions, light conditions,
Mature trees.
mature trees that they're associating with. Do you want to speak on that?
I'm handing it to you.
Okay, so yeah, so Yeah.
Dive deep
Okay.
into
Mm.
relationships.
myceliums, yeah.
Yeah, mycelial relationships. Ready, and Anne wants to bring one in, so I just want to make sure this is a good time to bring stuff in for you.
Well, maybe wait a little bit.
How long?
10 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. Okay, yeah. So the reason that, a lot of mushrooms can't be grown in that factory is that they have to associate with the roots of trees. So the trees, we've learned this just recently, that mushrooms need the trees as much as the trees need the mushroom. The mushroom is providing extra moisture, ability to get to moisture to the tree, and the tree is giving that mushroom some food. So it's kind of like what we call a symbiotic relationship. It's super cool, right? Mushrooms, trees working together. So that can't be reproduced in a factory. That has to happen out in the wild. So things like chanterelles, black chanterelles, they just, you can't grow them commercially. Whereas like a shiitake that grows on a log, you can recreate that situation. Someone had a bag of the substrate that they bought out there. It's all inoculated with those spores. And so that's going to happen in your backyard, in your bathtub, wherever, but some you can't do that. Yeah.
Does the mushrooms that grow commercially taste different than the ones in the wild?
I've never heard that question posed before. You'd have to do a taste test. And I don't know that the ones, I guess like shiitakes, they did used to grow in the wild, right? Obviously they did. They weren't just propagated by man. So if you were to go to Japan and get wild ones and then compare them to the ones here, you might taste a difference. It's very possible, right? Because now you're on a slightly different substrate. That's why that's why you don't eat the shiitake stems, because they're really kind of woody. They've taken on kind of that lignin kind of thing. And so, yeah, these are all good questions. It's very possible. Like, does that white button mushroom taste different from the brown one? You'd have to cook them up, in a very controlled environment and then test it out, right? Okay, our mushrooms are ready. Our cream is ready. Now we're going to make our delicious creamy sauce thing. So we're going to put in 2 eggs, organically grown eggs, only the best, only the best. Some garlic. I've been accused of using too much garlic. It doesn't faze me that I've been accused of that. I will not change my ways. I love garlic. When I go to the store, I always buy another head of garlic, regardless of how many I have, because you just don't know. Today, I'll go a little bit modest. This, by the way, is the best garlic press around. Sad to say they don't make it anymore, but this, if you go to like the Goodwill consignment store or something, look for this thing because they don't make it anymore. It's the best one. All right. It is Xylus. They made like a moderner, like a newer version of it, and it works pretty good. I think I have one over here, but this thing, I look for them. I mean, it's indestructible, so I don't need another one, and yet I'm still looking for more, so I will always be on the lookout for another garlic press. It's like they make great gifts, right? Paperweight, yes. Put it in my pocket here. Okay, so here's our recipe. By the way, there are copies of the recipe here that you can take. I'm leaving out the chicken stock just because, I don't know. Nutmeg, crucial part of this ingredient, crucial ingredient in this recipe. Nutmeg, love it. This thing is the best device too for grinding up your nutmeg. It's specifically made for this. A little more pepper. A little more of this delicious porcini salt. People can smell that too if they want. I think we're going to add some milk. I'm not a measurer. Sorry. Yeah. I don't think I've ever been able to properly follow a recipe in my life. It's not one of my strong points. I made it, yeah. And it's about time to make more. I'm putting in tarragon because I think tarragon is going to go really nicely with our porcini and our cheese, but you can use any herb you want. Put in the cream. Okay. All right, now it's time to assemble. It's time to get our hands dirty, right? So we're gonna butter this casserole dish. just so things don't stick. Butter it. Or you could use oil if you're avoiding butter. The bread, you want to be relatively sturdy bread and you want it to dry out. So this is like an Acme Levain. I've cut off most of the crust besides a little bit because you want a little bit of crunchy texture, but you don't want really dry, hard bottom of the bread kind of situation. I bought this bread like about a week ago, just left it and then I cut it up this morning so you can feel it's very firm texture. Slice up some more.
Some people were asking about the ratio of desiccated porcinis to salt.
Oh.
Make that.
Oh, good question. I mean, again, I'm not one who measures at all, ever. I don't even know why I have these things in my life because I very rarely use them. Even when I bake, I'm just like, I don't know if I'm just resisting. I just know. But so, yeah, you know, like I would say that container size, maybe a fifth of the porcini, the ground up porcini, and then
So 1 to 5.
yeah. And so here's more dried porcini. You can put it in anything, right? Yes. It's porcini mushroom that I ground up in the coffee grinder. You want to smell it? Julie will let you smell it. So I buttered this thing. I've got my stale bread and I'm just going to soak it. You don't want to get it too soggy, but we're going to pour this over the top anyway. It doesn't matter. Maybe that's shiitake powder. I could be lying. It could be shiitake powder.
Maybe that's why, because it's less.
I need to label things because not only do I not measure things, I don't label things either. And I think I'm going to remember what that is.
Black chanterelle, correct?
Those are the black chanterelles. And that is my favorite all-time choice edible. Not just yet, but thank you. All right.
Why are you dipping it rather than just pouring the wet stuff over the dry?
Because that's how I was taught to do it. I think it's going to help it kind of soak it up as opposed to just pouring it over top and maybe it won't get everywhere, you know, is probably the idea, but
Or like French toast.
yeah. And so again, you can make this, assemble it and let it sit overnight and then bake it in the morning. Yes. Oh, for sure. I've got black chanterelle salt that I made last year when I used black chanterelles in my recipe. You can make shiitake or shiitake powder. You can make shiitake salt. You can make all kinds of flavored salts. So you don't need to go to the store and spend a lot of money. You can make it yourself, right? So as long as you've got that clean coffee grinder.
Wash my hands. so I'm
Okay.
ready.
So now I'm going to put some of these mushrooms and my onion mixture on here. Still a little hot. And so for the ones that you all are going to taste in a little bit, I used Fontina cheese, but for this demonstration, I'm going to use goat cheese. Does anyone here like goat cheese? I really like goat cheese. And we just have new goats at the farm too. For years, we didn't have goats and they're back now. You should all go visit the goats before you leave here today. Go say hi to them for me. So this actual goat cheese has black truffle flavoring in it too. So we're really going crazy with the mushrooms today. Crazy. So I'm just going to put some of this on the top. Wish you all could see what I'm doing, but
Just imagine.
just imagine. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we all got to get a mirror. I tend to not use the shiitake salt that I made. I tend to just use the porcini salt, but I guess it depends on, you know, if you were making some like an Asian style recipe that had shiitake, you would use the salt. All right. I'm gonna put a little bit of Parmesan here too. Then we're gonna go with more bread. So the great thing about this bread pudding is that you can have this for breakfast, your strata, right? They call it. It sits overnight in the refrigerator and then you bake it off in the morning for brunch or whatever. You can have this leftover for lunch, right? Once you've cooked it, you can have it the next day. You can have it as your side dish to your meat entree. It's really very versatile. Not to mention delicious. Oh, yes, question. You know, I'm not a huge fan of Parmesan. I like Pecorino more, but you can use any cheese you want. I personally don't like Swiss cheese, so I would never put this in here. I don't care if it's a cave aged Gruyere or not. People are always like, just try this cave aged Gruyere. One of my best friends works at cheese board, and whenever I come over, she always slips in some cave aged. I'm like, you know, no matter how many times you present it, I don't care which producer, which cow, this in the Alps, you know, I just don't like it. I'm just like, no, she's making me feel bad about myself. I don't like Swiss cheese. So really, it's just about what you like, right? I wouldn't put a Taleggio in here, although Taleggios, when you do heat them up, they're not as kind of funky. I like goat cheese and I like really flavorful cheese, but you know, when you go to France, it's a whole nother ball game, right? I mean, there's cheeses on that cart that you're like, oh my God, no, right? So it's, you know, I don't know. I have kind of become more attuned to funky cheeses. My favorite cheese is a goat cheese that's got that runny center, the ashy rind. That's like my spirit cheese. I'm like, yes, please. So she always presents that to me, as well as that cave aged Gruyere that she knows I don't like. Okay. But really, you know, it's all about what you like. Maybe you like really stinky cheese, and that's going to be great. Okay, we're almost done. Now we're going to take this and pour the extra on top. And we're going to smooth it out. We're going to add a little bit more Parmesan. And then it's going to go in the oven. And you have to come back in like 3 hours. Just kidding. Just kidding. We have two that are going to come out just now. One thing I forgot to mention is these dried porcini. Trent and I have very differing opinions about porcini mushroom. When he forages them, he likes to eat them fresh. And if you get them fresh before the maggots and the little flies and stuff have gotten in there, because they, you know, the mothers lay the eggs right at the base of that thing. And so they're going to tunnel their way up through there. So if you get them when they're super fresh and the flies haven't gotten there first, yeah, right on the grill, or like if they're super pristine, you can slice them up raw, make that salad that Chez Panisse does with the fennel and the lemon and the olive oil. It's like so amazing, right? But I like to just take my mushrooms, I don't care how pristine they are, and I like to dry them. And then I like to rehydrate them. So when you go to a Chinese restaurant, those shiitake mushrooms, those were dried mushrooms that they rehydrated, right?
Did you talk about rehydration? How do you do that?
Well, generally with the porcini, I do it in this cream, but you can just use some water, like the ones that are in the bread pudding that's coming right now. I did that, just put some water, just enough to cover it, let it sit for a while, and they'll rehydrate. But so what I normally would do with this would be chop it up really fine and mix it in here as well. But I just ran out of time. So excellent. So this would have gone in there, but I just didn't happen. Any other questions before we're about to try our delicious bread pudding? Yes.
I have a question about, has the park district ever considered like more of the land?
No, they're pretty strict about no foraging. You know, people are always afraid that people will get sick, and so they're very lawsuit phobic, and so I don't imagine that changing anytime soon. But there are places you can forage. So Point Reyes, Salt Point, Jackson or Jefferson, that demonstration forest. There are places. Make friends with people who have, you know, land. I've met people who are like at parties and they're like, you can come to my property and look around for mushrooms. Or they're like, oh, my grandfather used to hunt for mushrooms. Oh, that'd be so quaint. Come by. Of course, I'd never take them up on it, but you could, right? So. How do you figure out what is a good mushroom to eat and what is not a good mushroom to eat? This is something that you have to really educate yourself. You need to familiarize yourself. So if you were to see different types of lemons, right? A Meyer lemon next to like a Eureka lemon, you'd be able to tell the difference, right? One looks very different from the other, but it's kind of subtle differences, but you're going to have to go out and look at things, look at them over and over again. Go with a group. MSSF, the Mycological Society of San Francisco, go with a group, people who know what those mushrooms are. And you just need to like bring a guidebook and really familiarize yourself before, you know, you feel confident and competent about eating something. So like that shiitake mushroom, I thought for sure I'd found the shiitake mushroom, right? Well, related, but it wasn't the same thing, right? So any other questions? All right, so this one has portobellos along with the dried porcini and basil, and this one has the black chanterelles and tarragon. So you can make 2 lines, come on up and we'll taste it. Time to try it. Now, the proof is in the pudding, right? Isn't that what they say? The proof is in the pudding. So we'll see. We'll see how it is.
Now, am I just going?
And you can take a look at this beautiful thing here. Yeah. Doesn't that look beautiful? Don't you want to eat that? With like a beef tenderloin and a little jus around the plate. Don't have tonight, right?
Yeah. I'm not sure how this is gonna go. This is the first one. Here you go. So you're just gonna figure out how to eat it?
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. You ready to try it? I will. I've found a couple times, but they're always like way up on the tree, right? They're so tall, you need a ladder to get them. But, oh, pom-pom. So do you buy them at the farmer's market? Right.
For the quick cheese, you do rehydrate that before.
No, I put the cream in here and then I put the mushroom in there and I just put it on super low because it will boil over. It will just like you turn your back and it's like it's everywhere, right? I've happened so many times to me. So you just put it on super crazy low and let it sit for like an hour. They're still a little firm, but like these are going to be delicious in something. I just didn't. I would normally like this one. You can see I chop them up and mix them in. You could even just like in a blender, you know, get it good and soft.
Thank you so much. You're
Mhm.
wonderful. And very
Well, thank you.
great presenter, I wanted to say.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
It's very hard to do this.
Oh, right.
I'm
I've
sure
had
you have
practice.
experience.
Right. Every year. The hard part is coming up with the new recipe.
Do you make a new one every year?
Yes. Last year I outdid myself. I did 1 recipe, 3 preparations. So it was like a chicken meatball. So chicken thighs, so the fattier meat. And then pistachios, the black chanterelles. No. And then the tarragon. And so I did meatballs, like cocktail meatballs. I did a stuffed mushroom cap and then a ravioli filling. But it was virtual, so I could do it. I didn't have to make it for everyone here, right? So it was easier. You're welcome. Right. Yeah, I want to know, is it good or not?
so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Rusty bits.
Thank you.
You're welcome. This one has the black chanterelles. If I had my druthers, I'd be eating this one.
Yeah. This is my like what are we doing for my birthday? We're gonna come to Mushroom Fest.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to indulge on your birthday? Oh, great. Thank you. It doesn't matter, whatever is convenient.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Enjoy.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Enjoy. Yum, yum, yummy. You're welcome. And tended to it while it was in the oven. She's crucial component here in making sure it got pulled off. Great. Are you sure? There's plenty. There's plenty. Mhm.
Thank you so much, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you. That was really informative.
This is,
I'm gonna just assume that I'm telling you, but I guess you can never freeze mushrooms.
you can cook them and freeze them. My friend
Oh, you
Keiko,
can cook them and then freeze them, but not like when they're fresh.
yeah, no, my friend Keiko, who's really into the matsutake, she will cook them like a porcini, slow cook them and then freeze them. I would cook them before. Sorry?
Can I give a
Yeah,
sample to my
absolutely.
husband?
I would definitely cook them before freezing them.
Otherwise it's too
I just think that with freezing process, the cell walls are gonna, like, it just would get weird. I would cook it and then freeze it, like vacuum seal and freeze it.
The salt, like, is there a proportion to like salt? to
Yeah,
mushroom?
you know, like I would say like a 5 to 1.
5 to 1,
Five, no, five,
mushrooms.
sorry, 4, 5 to 1, 4 to 1, whatever, like more salt than thing. But just however you like it, right?
Enough to give it that flavor.
Oh yeah, right. So like when I was cooking the mushrooms, I put in the porcini salt. Like you use any other salt, but I really want that mushroom flavor in there. So yeah.
And do you ever do like truffles or anything like that? Like,
Ooh, you know, I would just drizzle truffle oil over this. You're welcome. Yeah, so if you're gonna want a wine pairing with this bread pudding, my personal sommelier said a young light Nebbiolo from the Long. So the Long area is known for truffles. And so you want something, a light kind of acidic wine, Nebbiolo with this bread pudding. You're welcome. You're welcome.
The same thing?
Yes, that one has what do you call it? Portobellos, and this has the black chanterelles.
You know that porcini salt?
Yes.
Sir, I